Welcome to the Bike Talk with Dave podcast. I'm your host, Dave Mabel. Thanks tons for tuning in. Today's guest is a Bike Talk alumni, Erik Schlimmer. Erik was born on October 17th of 2024. No, he wasn't. Erik was on the pod in October of 2024, episode 145. And the reason for our conversation then was to talk about his comeback. And I feel like after my long absence here, this is quite appropriate. More on that in a minute. Anyway, Erik had raced mountain bikes at the national level more than 20 years ago, and now in his 50s, he decided to pin on a number and give it a go again. That was our last episode. So we decided to do a follow-up to see how his winter of training and his summer of racing went. So last fall, we reconnected to see how it all went. Now, that alone is a great reason to catch up. But wait, there's more. And this all ties into a little reinvigorated Bike Talk with Dave, which I needed, as you can see from the lack of episodes for the past 6 months or so. Anyway, Erik is and has been a hiker. He's written several hiking guidebooks about trails in his native New England, specifically the Adirondack Mountains. Well, he's relocated to Colorado, and he was in Colorado Springs in 2024, and he now lives a couple of hours south of Colorado Springs in the shadows of the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. And though you can take the guidebook author out of the Adirondacks, you can't take the desire to write out of the guidebook author, or something like that. Anyway, today he is sharing his long gravel bikepacking route through the wide open spaces south and west of the Sangre de Cristos. It sounds like a beautiful area to ride, and one that is not going to be overrun from a steady flow of traffic up and off of I-70, a little off the beaten path. Should be beautiful. Can't wait to hear all about it. So, interestingly, this all ties into my new project and the evolution of Bike Talk with Dave. As you can tell from the lack of content the past winter, I've been struggling with content for this podcast. I've always referred to it as a cycling variety show. And if you've been listening, you know that I've talked to pretty much anyone and everyone. All great listening and all interesting stories. And together, you and I have met some super cool people. But I've been looking for direction with the pod, like a real mission, more focused than the broad subjects of a variety show. And this winter, two things happened. One, my wife Dee, whom you know from past episodes, she earned a sales trip to Puerto Rico that included a +1. That would be me. And number two, I blew out my knee while skiing. That sucks. Anyway, in my downtime that comes from a blown out knee, I tore my ACL, my MCL, and my meniscus, which I've heard if you do 3, that's a totally blown out knee. So I totally blew out my knee. Anyway, tore all those out skiing, and holy moly. So I had surgery in March, and I have watched a ton of YouTube. And before our trip to Puerto Rico, I started watching travel channels. And I thought, well, this would be super cool for mountain bike trails. Obviously, like if we go somewhere to visit, we all hop on Mountain Bike Project or Trail Forks or maybe even just Strava and you find the hot spots, right? But then you want to know, where's a good place for some pre-ride coffee? Or where do I go for a post-ride beer or post-ride food? What are the bike shops that can support me in the area? And I mean, what amenities are available at the trailhead? Is there water there? Are there restrooms there? Can I change my clothes there? Or is it just a dirt parking lot? All this kind of stuff. So, I've created a YouTube channel and am close to publishing my first trail, the Sycamore Trail in Des Moines. It's both near and dear to my heart, as well as near physically. Also, I have a ton of footage of it, and since I'm still stuck at home rehabbing my knee and I can't drive yet, having footage in the can was key. So the channel is called Pedaling Dirt. I do have a little video up there, as well as by the time this publishes, I will have the Sycamore Trail episode up. So there is something to look at, but obviously I will be adding more as I build the catalog of trails. And since I have a podcast, I'll be posting the audio right here. And as this expands, I'll be traveling and talking to trail managers and people riding the trail, and I'm even going to do some experiential pods as I ride along some of the trails. I kind of did that in the Single Speed USA World Championship episode from Decorah, where I was riding along and getting to know the trail as I went. So I'll be doing more of that and sharing what I experience on the trails as well. So again, I'm starting with some local trails to me, which will help me kind of refine the format, do some experimentation, get experience making these episodes. And, you know, I already have a bunch of footage, or I can get it easily and have my beautiful bride and supportive wife, Dee, drive me around to get some of the shots I need. She's been so patient through this whole knee thing. Anyway, I hope you continue to stay tuned on Bike Talk with Dave, and I hope you check out Pedaling Dirt on YouTube. And I actually, ties back to my episode today, would love to get out and ride Erik's route and show you some of the resources and attractions along the way of his route. But for now, I hope you enjoy my conversation with Erik Schlimmer as we catch up about his year and a half and comeback to pinning a number on, and his new guide for the trail around the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. Erik, great to see you again. It's been just over a year since we've talked last, and you've had a great summer of riding your bike and pinning a number on for the first time in 30 years, and I want to see how it went. But we've also got something else to talk about, which is a little bike ride that you would invite others to participate in. But anyway, we'll get to that point. But welcome back to Bike Talk with Dave. I appreciate seeing you again, and I'm anxious to catch up.
It's great to be back. You reminded me earlier that it's been over a year since we last spoke, and I have trouble believing that. I mean, time flies. Time flies when you're having fun, because I did have a lot of fun. Last time, I remember telling you that was the first podcast I had been on to talk about cycling. I'm primarily known as a mountaineer and long-distance hiker, and it was great talking to you, taking a ride down memory lane, talking about the 80s and the 90s, which is still, no matter what anybody tells you, that's still the heyday, the greatest era of mountain bike racing, in my opinion. It was so great back then. So it's great to be back with you, and I'm sure we're going to have some more fun.
Yeah, the 80s and 90s were definitely an experimental phase in mountain biking with Kevlar wheels and drop bars or straight bars. I guess that debate is still going on, isn't it, if you watched Leadville this year. But the evolution definitely continues. We were talking a little bit about the changes in equipment over the past 30 years, and I want to talk about that. But, you know, our conversation last time centered around you making a decision to pin a number on after approximately 30 years without towing the line at a bike race, mountain bike specifically. And we talked in October. So you had the winter to do some training and preparation. You had lived in Colorado Springs at the time. I think you've moved a little bit south of there now, which we will talk about later. Um, but had the winter to train, spring to prep, and summer to race. So first of all, how how was it overall? How was the experience of the past year?
It was very interesting, as anything would be if you hadn't done it in 30 years. So my last race, I still remember, was the Eastern Cup in Vermont during the summer of 1995, and I was either on a I think I was riding a Proflex 854, full suspension, which was very uncommon back then. And here I am showing up on this new bike, and we can go into the changes of bikes. So the gear alone, the technology was quite different, but it was kind of like reliving the glory days. Just I know I'm not as fast, and that was really interesting. So I went into the season with, in hindsight, unrealistic expectations of how I was going to do, because I was like, well, hell, my last race, I was always placing in the top third, and it was mixed, expert, and pro. And, I could always win a sport class, no problem. And so I was like, well, I'll just go in where I left off. I made it sound like I had raced last year, but this was 30
Right.
years. And so I entered the expert class. I didn't come anywhere close to winning, like not even close. But that really wasn't the point of it. So last time we spoke, and I didn't go too into it, but I think you put two and two together, and probably some listeners put two and two together. I had experienced a traumatic event about a year before you and I spoke. And that
Hmm.
was rock bottom, worst part of my life. I mean, everybody kind of has their bottom in life. That was it. And a week after that tragedy, the company I worked for went out of business. So when I was down, life kicked me in the testicles while I was down. And it was really bad. And I found myself feeling incapable. And that was the sense, right? I have no control. I'm at the whims of the universe. Terrible things happen all the time. I considered starting a new career. I was out of work for 6 months, and it was just looking really bleak. And I'm a therapist, and I have never had a client feel worse by taking action. And I tell this to clients all the time: do something, for crying out loud. And I took a little bit of my own advice. Now, I had continued hiking, long distance hiking and mountaineering and stuff like that, but I needed something new. I needed something fresh, a new challenge. And suddenly, I don't know where this idea came from, but yeah, about a year and a half, I said, I'll get back on my bike after a 30-year absence, just hop into the expert class and just go for it. And so I had a couple goals this season. Show the first goal was to show up to every race, which was really difficult when life has got you down, to say the least, right? Just getting there was an accomplishment for me. I also finished every race. That was goal number two. And goal number three was I want to do it again. And so show
Hmm.
up, finish, do it again. That's it. I wasn't going for the podium. I wasn't going for a speed record, anything like that. It was just to get out there and do it. So race number one, two, three, four, and then five. And it was very emotional for me, very rewarding. And I'm really glad I took some of my own advice.
Yeah, I love that advice. I was just listening to a podcast today. Um, Actually, it was Wild Ideas Worth Living, and Shelby Stanger is the host. She was actually on Bike Talk with Dave. I don't know what episode she was on, but I had her on. Anyway, I was listening to her podcast today, and she had a guy on who living the adventurous life. He was a skydiver. He taught skydiving. He taught snowboarding. Lived in a van. Rock climber. Like all the stuff, right? And in a skydiving incident, uh, over the course of a year and a half, he lost both his legs. He lost the first one immediately, and then a year and a half of trying to make the one that he kept, the meat one, he said, work. It just wasn't working, and he's finally like, just take it off and give me two prosthetics. Um, and it was painful. Prosthetics are painful, and obviously, when you lose both your legs and you lived a life of adventure, you think it's over. But he wanted to get his life back, and he remembers talking to somebody who said, like, always be moving forward. All you have to do is take one step forward, and that is a step forward, not a step back. And he's like, so that's what I did. If I could just take one step forward in a day, it was a successful day. And now he is freaking without, he literally doesn't have two legs. And he's like, he was the first person to fly a wingsuit without any legs. He's snowboarding, he's rock climbing, he is teaching skydiving again. But you're absolutely right. Like sometimes the hardest thing to do is to take that one step forward, whatever that step is, whether it's, I mean, it might be loading your bike in the car and driving to the race and picking up your number at registration and pinning it on. Like that process right there. If you can get through that process, you got the rest of the day handled. So I love that. I think you're absolutely right. And I think that's great advice for all of us to hear, right? I rambled.
Yeah.
I
Oh no, I was going
sorry.
to say you put it very well. An alternate thing I tell clients often is the easiest thing to do is nothing,
For
and
sure.
most easy things aren't worth doing. They're just
For
not.
sure. Right,
The
right.
toughest things give us the greatest psychological reward.
Yeah. Uh, but sometimes the toughest things aren't you saying I'm going to win Cape Epic, but it's just simply driving to the race and getting the bike out of the car and pinning a number on. Like if you can do those things, it's a great day.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I do remember that you had a tragedy, and we did talk about that. So, episode 145, I would recommend people go back a year and listen to your conversation about you deciding to pin a number back on and getting back into it. So once you decided that, how was the winter and spring of training? Like, what did you do? How did you change your life uh, compared to the previous 30 years in order to get ready to go to that first race?
Right. Well, something I knew but I forgot is you can be a pretty good athlete in any sport. So my primary sports again, mountaineering and long distance hiking. But that doesn't mean you're a really good mountain biker, And just because you're a really good mountain biker doesn't mean you're a good marathon runner, all right? There's a bit of overlap in just base fitness, but I was really surprised. So I hadn't raced in 30 years, but then I also hadn't ridden in 15. And I thought I was just going to hop back on the bike and crank out a 10, 20, 30 mile ride. And when I started training right around Thanksgiving, so about a year ago, I was doing like 10, 12, 15 mile rides, and I was pretty tired at the end. And it took several months to build that base fitness and to get used to a different bike. So the last time I raced and the last time I rode, I'm riding a bike with 26-inch wheels. It did have disc brakes, but the geometry is different, and just bikes are really different. And the thing I noticed about a 29er is it feels floaty. It just kind of mashes. It feels like you're riding on mashed potatoes. It just kind of winds around kind of lazily, and I had to really develop a new riding style. And that took about a month just to get used to the bike that I could bomb down something and feel really comfortable. Um, I actually had two people help me out in my training, and I can't thank them enough. So I had a performance coach and I had a technical skills coach, and they both
Hmm.
volunteered their time. They were pro bono coaches. They're up around Boulder, Denver, and one is has a company called Bike Ready,
Hmm.
excuse me, Bike Ready, Ride Ready, and the other is a junior, basically a junior Olympic coach. He's done the Cape Epic. He's a former speed skating Olympian. And basically,
Hmm.
I told these guys a very short version of my story that I told you about a year ago. And I was like, I could really use some help here. It's so daunting trying to do this on my own. And they're like, yeah, no problem. So I learned some new riding skills, kind of more up to date skills than what the skills were in the 90s. And this is the first time I had raced and trained using a heart rate monitor, which was
Hmm.
also a great asset. And I'm a data nerd. I like data. So that worked out really well. I was riding right through the winter. I like riding in the winter. When I lived in upstate New York, I used to commute year round. Like the cold doesn't bother me. At the time, I had a full suspension Rocky Mountain, and I quickly learned it wasn't going to cut it for cross country racing. So when the spring came around, I bought another bike. I bought a BMC, and I bought a hardtail. And it's funny, at these races, most of the time it was the only hardtail. I had the
Huh.
only hardtail at most races, and it was by far the cheapest. It's $1,000 bike, so it retails
Huh.
for 2,000. And so I just went for it. I was like, I'm going to show up, 30-year absence, $1,000 hardtail, and just kind of go for it. Like I just didn't care. And I liked that. I've always kind of been the black sheep. So anyway, I trained through the winter, trained up through the spring, and I believe the first race was in June. I ended up doing 5 races. One was a standalone, and then a series of four. And that wrapped up in August. I was in pretty good shape by the first race, but by the end of the season, I haven't been in that good shape in probably 10, 15 years. It felt really good. So, besides just going to the races and meeting these goals, etc., it felt really good to be 52 years old and know that I could just go out and ride as hard as I can for a few hours. It's just a good feeling.
Um, I'm hung up on your bike. I live in Iowa, and we have some. It's definitely not Colorado, but we've got some sweet single track, and it is smooth. Like you do not need full suspension. You hardly need uh, RockShox front fork. Like a fully rigid fork is typically fine here. Um, but my son lives in Colorado Springs, and we go out and ride with him. And he actually kind of ended up with the hardtail, and he is looking hard for a. Uh, I'd say he's using the word enduro bike, um, which feel like it might be kind of heavy, but he loves bombing downhill and he wants that full suspension. So I'm shocked that you went from a full suspension bike living in Colorado and went to rigid, a hardtail. I know you had a fork, but uh, I'm shocked by that. What was the attraction to you, and how was it racing?
I think price was a consideration. So, I can buy a really nice hardtail for 2 grand. At least I think it's really nice. Or a pretty lousy full suspension bike for 2,000. And I
Probably
wanted to
heavy.
get the best
Heavy would be
bang
the
for buck. And I found this bike for half price. It was a leftover 2023. So I just couldn't pass it up. It was just the right bike at the right time. And I love the feel of a hardtail. It's
huh.
really what I've always ridden, except for maybe 2 seasons on that ProFlex 854. I love the feel of a hardtail. Now, to answer your question, how'd the racing go? If I race next year, I will not be on a hardtail.
Enough said.
Yeah, I will be buying a full suspension bike. But I only need, I would get a pure race XC full suspension bike, an inch or two in the rear. That's all I really need. One of the races was a hill climb. And so I really appreciated that on a hardtail. That was good. The first race is in Canyon City. Canyon City's kind of central Colorado, very rough, very rocky. Back in the day, in the 90s, I probably completed 25, 30 races. So this was probably race number 31 in Canyon. It started the season. And that is the roughest course I've ridden in my life. It's just
Oh, wow.
nonstop exposed bedrock, gravel, and rocks about the size of your fist. That was a brutal course, and it was the longest race as well. So I love my hardtail. I'm going to keep it. It's ideal for long distance riding, which I think we're going to talk about later. But if I return to racing next year, I'm going to treat myself to a rather nice, pure XC race bike full suspension.
Nice. Attaboy. Yeah, that must have just beat you up. I remember um, this had to be 88. I bet you it was the fall of 88, either 87 or 88. We're going back a long time. And I had a Trek, I don't know, 8700. It was the purple carbon frame. It's a
Mm-hmm.
beautiful bike.
Mm-hmm.
And an aluminum fork. And I did a race in Iowa City at a place called Sugar Bottom. My Core 4 listeners will recognize the name Sugar Bottom. And it halfway through that race, my then girlfriend, now wife, was at the feed zone or whatever, and I remember yelling to her, "I'm getting a fork!" It That race sold me my first RockShox, probably RockShox Judy, um, and this race in Canyon City, just as you are describing it, it sounds to me like riding at Sugar Bottom, and it just is a constant pounding and
Yeah.
destroying of your hands and your back and your triceps and your shoulders and all the other parts.
Oh yeah, it was like riding a $2,000 jackhammer. Now the one forgiving quality, I have a BMC two strokes. It's an aluminum frame, and back in the day, aluminum was known as being very stiff. But
Hmm.
BMC claims that the rear dropout can travel 12 millimeters, which I was really surprised at. But you can feel the frame flex. Like if you're pedaling uphill on pavement, you can feel a little bit of bob. So that saved me a little, but still not enough. So yeah, I'm looking forward to a full suspension bike next year.
Huh. Oh, that's interesting. What about your training and your fitness? Like, did it come back? I know you weren't winning the state championships, but you used to be a good mountain biker, good racer, competitive, um, vying for the podium. What was your experience in the fitness realm? Did you find other 52-year-olds um, faster than you? Did you find yourself competitive with other 52-year-olds? Like where'd you feel like you were at?
Right. Not an expert. And I'll just be honest. I got smoked every race in
Smoked.
expert. I
All
got
right.
smoked. Yeah. In hindsight, I I, I should have entered sport.
Yeah.
I think I'm kind of a mid pack now, sport racer where I used to win, but I'm just not as dedicated. And something I learned when I went back is I only now do I realize how dedicated I was back in the 90s. It was just my life. I was absolutely consumed with racing. And racing just doesn't interest me enough for me to do better. This
Hmm.
sounds kind of lazy, but it's like I'm not going to dedicate my life to trying to get to a sport class podium, move up to expert, and then end up with results that I had 30 years ago. It just doesn't interest me enough. I have different interests now. So my fitness level is very good for a 52-year-old guy, not that great for a 52-year-old guy racing other dudes in expert class.
When
I'd
you
be
s-
about a mid pack sport racer right now. Surprisingly, the training that these two excellent coaches guided me through is basically the same exact training I did in the 90s. It was very familiar to me. I would do one long, slow ride a week.
Mhm.
I would do some sprints, and they were structured a certain way for time or distance and recovery time and stuff like that. I would do occasionally kind of mimic a race. So 20 miles about as fast as I can go. But one of my coaches was explaining this when he was teaching me how to use a heart rate monitor. And he was saying, it's not, he goes, Eric, the fastest racers, like the guys in Tour de France, it's not that they can be in zone four forever. It's that they're really fast in zone one and two. That's how it
Hmm.
works, right? So you need this base level fitness. It's not about going all out as hard as you can, as long as you can. It's how fast can you go at a conservative heart rate. And I didn't know that. And maybe it's because, I'm more familiar with the 90s. It's like the way I trained in the 90s, every training ride, I just pretended I was racing. It was just all out. And I was just
Mhm.
wearing myself out. Where now the training, the toughest part was I always wanted to go too fast because he could see my heart rate data. And he's like, dude, you were riding at like 85% for an hour. And I was like, yeah, but that's how you get in shape. And he's like, actually, it's not.
Huh, that's interesting.
And so it was to slow down, you're going to gain a lot more. And a quote sticks with me. About a week before the race, I really wouldn't do anything. About 4 days out, I would do a sprint day, just maybe a half hour of sprints. And that was it. And I would rest, rest, rest. And I said, yeah, but shouldn't I be riding? Because that's why we ride, to get faster. And he gave me some great advice. He says, you can't do anything to get faster in the last week, but you can do a lot of things to get slower.
That's
And that
actually a
is
great quote.
overtraining. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
overtraining, which I had a real challenge with.
Yeah. Huh, that's interesting. That's a great quote that we should all remember. I used to run marathons, and every marathon training program, you do your last kind of long, hard run. Like most of them are 3 weeks before your race. Like 3 weeks. Like I'm going to be out of shape in 3 weeks. No, 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 no,
Hmm.
nope. You put it all in the bank, and you'll cash it in on race day. So yeah, it's sometimes I remember doing the Ohio State road race championships, and my wife and I ran a camp in Cleveland area, and that week was a busy week, and I actually couldn't get out on my bike that week, and I was kind of freaking out because I couldn't get out on my bike that week, like the day before, like race was on Saturday, and the whole week before I couldn't ride, and I had a great race because I was so well rested. and I was ready to go, and I was like horse at the starting gate. Let me go, let me go, let me go. So, yeah, that's good lesson if you want to perform well. I am curious. Um, you hadn't ridden in 15 years prior to deciding to pin a number back on. Um, you obviously are in good shape from your um, uh, hiking and your backpacking trips and adventure stuff that you do. Uh, what like what'd you get out of it? What pinning a number on versus um, just deciding to ride a bike again? What did you get out of the decision to show up and do a race next summer? Does that make sense? Did I ask that okay?
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious about like if you had just decided to like, hey, my bike is in the garage, I'm going to blow the dust off and start riding it a little bit, versus I'm going to get back into racing and do a handful of races next year, and I want to be prepared, and I'm going to ask for help from some coaches, and I'm going to get the right bike. What did that give you over just blowing the dust off an old bike and riding it around Colorado Springs?
That's a good question. It was a goal. It was a goal. So recreational riding, I don't have a goal. I'm just going out for a ride. It was very structured with a specific measurable outcome. And I hate to sound like a therapist, but when I develop goals with clients, they have to be measurable, right? So you can't, if I say, well, what do you want to do? And they're like, I want to feel better. I don't know what that means, and we can't measure it, right? So if I'm like, well, I'm going to get back into biking, it's like, well, I don't really know what that means. But it's like, I'm going to get back on my bike and train and do 5 races. Okay, all right, I see what you're doing here. It's measurable. It was also challenging, and I committed to it. So if I'm just kind of committing, and I'm using that term loosely, if I'm committing to just recreational riding, maybe I'll just ride once this week and then I'll take next week off and then maybe I'll ride again. But these are the dates, these are the races, this is how friggin' long they are. They have a lot of climbing. You need a bike, you need to get disciplined, and you need to do this. So I liked it in the sense that I knew at the end of the 5th race, if I could do it, and I wasn't really sure I'd be successful, if I got to the end of the 5th race, the feeling I was going to have is going to easily exceed riding in the winter, crashing, buying a bike, all the trials and tribulations of training. If I can reach the end of the 5th race, I am going to be completely over the moon. That's exactly what happened. I broke down. I cried like a little girl. It was so overwhelming. It was one of the greatest moments of my life. And I wasn't on the podium, right? This was not a World Cup. It was just a guy who had a lot of challenges in his life, get back on the bike and meet that goal. I don't think I could have gotten that feeling through recreational riding because if it got a little too challenging, I would have just rode less. I would have come up with some way to make it easier. But once I committed to 5 races, I couldn't make it any easier. It was going to be hard. And again, the greater the struggle, the greater the psychological reward. It was amazing. Wouldn't trade it for the world.
Huh, awesome. Will you do any of the events you did last year? Will you do any of them again next summer?
Good question. I'm undecided. Um, uh, Another thing, one of my coaches told me after working with me for a couple months, he said, Eric, this is what you need to do: is have fun. Have fun. Because you strike me. He goes. Don't take this the wrong way. You're not a racer. You're a rider, and there's a difference. He goes, but you can still race. Don't worry, because racing is just riding fast. Okay, but he goes, you're not a racer. So he goes, I could help you get to the podium. Okay, I can help you get mid-pack expert class. You're not going to have fun. You're just that type of guy. And what's really telling is I had the first race in Canyon City, and that was a 12-hour. So it's basically how many full laps can you do. So I couldn't really stop and smell the roses. Just as many laps you can get, go really fast. But the next races, they would send out us in the expert class, go. And sooner than later, the riders were pretty far ahead of me. Okay, most of the pack was far ahead. And behind me, they're letting sport class go. All right. And so there was this window about 3/4 out into the course where my colleagues were much faster than me and ahead of me. And the sport class guys, some are definitely catching up to me. And each race, I actually got off my bike and just walked because it was wildflower season.
Oh.
And there were columbines and there were sugar bowls and all my favorite flowers. I'm a guy who likes the woods. I probably gave up many places just looking at the wildflowers. Or I'll see like an animal, like, I don't know, a small mammal, and I would stop and just watch it. And people would go by me. I didn't give a shit that they went by me at all. I just love being in nature. And I told my coaches, and they were like, that sounds like you. That sounds like
Yeah.
something you would do, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not a racer at heart. I'm a rider. I still love riding. I love, love, love riding. However, I thought it would be really interesting to go back, to return in 2026 to at least the Canyon City race and see how I do. I think I'm going to do much, much better. The Canyon City race, I did 3 laps. That was about 36 miles. And I'm thinking next year maybe I could do 48 miles and about 5,000 vertical feet. That's going to be really interesting. And I'd like to see how I do on a different bike. I think I would have been faster on an XC full suspension bike. At this point, undecided. Again, I'm not a racer at heart, and I'm sure we're going to talk about it later. I had a lot more fun doing a recent 400-mile ride than my whole race season. I'm just a rider, not a racer. But we'll see.
Yeah. That's an interesting thing. And I do want to get to your 400-mile ride shortly here. But Dee and I, my wife, we're 60. Like, there is no glory in pinning a number on. Nobody cares if I get second in the local criterium with 8 other old guys and I happen to get second. I didn't, just to be clear, but nobody cares whether I get second or 8th or 12th. Like, there is nothing that's going to change in this world if I pin a number on and try to be super competitive and race my bike and try and get on the podium, right? Nobody cares. However, as you've said, it pinning a number on and committing to pin a number on gives us purpose. It gets us in the basement in the winter. It gets us to the gym in the winter. It gets us out on the roads when the weather might not be perfect. It gets us up early in the morning. It commits us to a long ride on Sundays, so that when we do pin a number on. We're going to do, there's a 60 some mile race. It's like 63 or 4, 100K. It's over 100K, aren't they all? Um, uh, in end of February, February 28th. And, uh, and we got to be ready for it. You know what I mean? We're not going to win it. Like, nobody cares how we do there, but it will give us purpose over the winter. And it will also feel good to have done it. You said you were emotional after your fifth race, and like you should be. You worked hard for it, and you made it through it. You did all the bike things and all that, and you made it through. And that's why we do it. That's why we pin a number on. It's not because we want to show off and prove to the world how fast we are, because nobody cares how fast we are. We are not winning the Tour de France. Like, that is so far gone. But it does give us purpose to get on our bikes, stay fit, stay healthy, have a goal in mind, and and keep moving, and just keep moving. So I love it. I love that you did that. I love that you found your bike. I also know that it seems to be that you've had a good year after your challenging year, and I'm going to give some credit to the bike for that. I don't know if you will, but I certainly will. I think if you are feeling confident in one area of your life, confident and happy, and if whatever area of your life gives you joy, I think that bleeds over into all the other areas of your life. So I don't know. I'm glad you did it, and I'm glad you shared your story. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, I ramble on, don't I? I apologize. um, so you you have moved. You're not in Colorado Springs anymore. You've moved a bit south into the San Luis. Do you say the S? Is it like Des Moines, or is it Des Moines? San
I've
Luis
heard both.
Valley.
I- Yeah, I've heard both. I've heard San Luis, and I've also heard San Louis. I say San Louis because it's a little more fun.
Yeah, fair enough. And you're sandwiched in between the Sangre de Cristo and I know I didn't say that right. And what's the other mountain range?
No, you got it. Yeah, Sangre de Cristos to the east and to the west are the San Juans.
San Juan's. That was an easy one to remember. Why didn't I remember that? Um, and it sounds like a beautiful area. I've never been down in that area, and I'd like to go. We almost came down. We visited our kid in October in Colorado Springs, and we went to look at the aspens, and we ended up going up towards Buena Vista and
Yep.
kind of playing around there. So we did not go down there, but we were going to head south towards your neighborhood. But you have crafted, and I think this is cool because when you were in New York, you were the king of um, kind of guidebooks and trail books and history books of the Adirondack area, upstate New York area. And so I know that you like exploring and you like putting routes together. And it looks like you've kind of been doing that in Colorado. Tell me about that.
I have. Yeah, so though I've been, and I'm dating myself, though I've been hiking since 1985. I've never been one to follow established routes. I've never hiked the Pacific Crest Trail, never hiked the Appalachian Trail. I'm out doing these lesser known long distance trails or just creating my own routes. I'll just take a map and piece something together. And that's kind of how I got into long distance mountain biking by riding the Arizona Trail Corridor. We talked about that last time, where I think I was a third person. This is way back in 2002, and then pieced together a route from Canada to Mexico and some other unique routes via foot and bike. So the San Luis Valley is absolutely stunning. I live kind of in the middle of it. It's the largest alpine valley in North America. It's 8,000 square miles, flat as a table. And 8,000 square miles is basically the entire state of New Jersey. It's just one valley in
Wow.
Colorado. It's just absolutely stunning, absolutely massive. So I finished the race season in August. I was in great shape. I got the bike. And so I said, well, I think I need another challenge. I'll get back into long distance mountain biking. And the last time I did that was my Canada Mexico ride in 2005. So it had been 20 years since I did a long trip. So I've got my hardtail. I ordered some new panniers, rear rack, handlebar rack, just a little bit of gear. I had all the camping gear already. And there are gravel routes around here that are established. But again, I like to be the black sheep. So I said, hell, I'll just create my own. Now, I'm just in love with the valley. I've explored it for the last few years, moved here in August, and I wanted to design a mountain bike slash gravel route with a couple of goals in mind. One, it is in the valley the entire time. Two, you can see the valley the entire time. Three, ride as much dirt and as less pavement as possible. So the route technically begins and ends in my backyard.
Oh,
So,
perfect.
and I live in Moffett. I live in Moffett, Colorado, population 108. It's kind of in the northeast corner of the valley. To make a long story short, I spent about 3 months mapping and exploring the route, and I explored it in my SUV. So I wanted to make sure that you could get a bike through there, that it wasn't gated, that it's open to bike use, et cetera, et cetera. I just didn't want to go out and just kind of figure it out on the fly like I used to. So I had actually driven the entire route, all 400 miles, before I set out on my bike. I mapped it, double checked it, everything. Got on my bike in my backyard, and about a week later, came back from the opposite direction. I named it the San Luis Grand Orbiter. The San Luis Valley has just a lot of eccentric characters. It's just kind of a odd collection of people. Maybe that's why I fit in here. And so it needed kind of an odd name. So 373.3 miles long. It doesn't climb very much, about 15,000 vertical feet, which isn't bad for a route that long. It's 100% open to the public, plenty of camping, traverses national forests and BLM land. Some pavement, but if I'm remembering correctly, I think the entire route is 89 or 90% dirt. There's one section that's like 100 miles with no pavement. Some fairly remote sections. And then I also wanted to give people an experience of San Luis Valley culture, so I specifically wove it to every small community kind of on the perimeter of the valley. So that would be 11 different communities. The largest is 1,500 people. The average population of these towns is somewhere around 300. And that's usually where you get your food and water and right back out. I'm partial to my own work. The route is friggin' stunning. I mean, on one side, the Sangre de Cristos, the other side, the San Juans, and it's just high desert riding. Average elevation around 7,900, 8,000. So the other advantage is if you're coming from, let's say, Iowa, Jersey, wherever, you don't really have to acclimate because it's generally not a problem until you hit about 9,000. So yeah, the San Luis Grand Orbiter should be open for business this spring.
Awesome. So I have some questions.
Mm-hmm.
You say camping. What kind of camping are you doing? Are you like side of the road, ditch, BLM land, so dispersed camping sites? Are there
Mm-hmm.
campgrounds? Combination?
Sure. So it runs the gamut. You could stop in these small towns and stay in an Airbnb, something like that. There are a couple hot springs along the way. There are three hot
Oh,
springs. You could stay there, stay in a yurt. So you could have it pretty civilized. Me, I'm a hiker at heart, so I just camped each night on BLM land or the national forest. So I could time my days where I didn't have to try to stealth camp like behind a barn somewhere or something like that. I camp legally every night. There are also a handful of campgrounds because this place, the valley gets a lot of traffic in the summer because we have Great Sand Dunes National Park. And a lot
Oh,
of people
sure.
want to go to that. And then, of course, the San Juans and the Sangre de Cristos as well. So it's mostly on public land. If you're on a long stretch of dirt road that's private on either side, I guarantee that night you could find a legal campsite.
Huh. Um, Hotels in some of the towns? Are some of the towns big enough to have an actual hotel? Or is it going to be Airbnbs and yurts?
Airbnbs and yurts, except for the town of Jerosa. Jerosa has a hotel, and Jerosa is about the size of the room that I am sitting in. It's an old hotel from the 1800s. It is
Oh,
my
cool.
favorite little community on the route. So no, these towns are so small. You're talking they're a lot like the town I live in. Gas station, maybe a dollar store, a post office, a volunteer firehouse, and that's it. Really, really small infrastructure.
How about food? Restaurants and resupply.
Right. So I mapped that out as well. So the route is broken down into 7 sections of about 55 miles each. Within each of those sections, you can definitely find water. It's generally a gas station or a campground. Those are the two main sources where I would get water. Resupply was also convenient. There's really no need to resupply every day, but I could resupply probably every third day. The longest stretch without water was somewhere around 55 miles, and the longest stretch without food, probably about 130. 2 days of riding, you would be there.
Huh, interesting. Um, and and I know from your Adirondack stuff, like this is your route and you encourage people to do it. Um, Tell me about that. Why make it open to the public? Why invite others to come do it? And then where do they go to get info on it?
Right. During the early 90s, I got an associate's degree in wilderness leadership. And it was basically, they taught you how to plan and lead expeditions. I had a really good professor, highly experienced in wilderness leadership, mountaineering, etc. And he told me something. He says, once you present the idea to the group, it's no longer yours.
Hmm.
And that's how I kind of feel about this route. I created it, I named it, and now I don't really want it to be mine. I don't think of it as mine. I think of it as ours, whoever us or ours may be. I'm not even really sure, but I don't think it's mine. And I had such a good time. It's just, again, I'm partial to my own work, but it's friggin' gorgeous. I would love to see other people ride this thing. So I'm traditional author. I've never had an ebook. I've personally never held a Kindle or anything like that. All my books about upstate New York history and the Adirondacks are all hard copies. But I don't think a hard copy is very practical for cycling. It's more practical for hiking, where you can just put it in your pocket and you have a top speed of 3 miles an hour. You have time to read. So I've been asking around, well, I don't even know how to proceed. Like, how am I going to get the word out about this? The plan is to just come up with a data book. So not a full-blown turn-by-turn guidebook. From what I gather, they're not really that necessary, that popular in cycling. So it's going to answer all the questions that you asked and a bunch more. So, where are the sweet campsites? Where do I get water? What is the history of this town? How steep is this descent? What kind of bike did you use? What do you recommend for gear, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And that's just an insider's view to help people be successful on the route. And then I'll come up with a GPX file that people can download onto their phone and follow it that way. All of this, by the way, is donation based. You want to give me $1 for the map? That's fine. You want to give me $10 for the data book? That's fine. Since I live on the route, I'm also building a campsite on my property.
Ooh.
We have a couple acres, and that's also going to be donation based. So you can you can camp at the start and end point. You want to give me $1, that's fine. You want to give me $20, that's fine too, just a primitive camp. One of the reasons I'm doing this is on my long distance trips, I had so many people help me out. Just strangers. I would ride into town. I've got this big burly beard. My bike is covered in mud. I've ridden like 2,000 miles. And somebody's like, looks like you could use a shower. I'm like, I sure could. And they give me directions to their ranch. And then before I know it, I'm eating dinner in their dining room. It's just that beautiful random act of kindness really helped me on my trips. I'm getting a little bit older, and so I'm kind of scaling back on my adventures, and I want to be more of a helper than an adventurer just to pay it back, to pay it forward.
Hmm. Very cool. I I looked a bit at your map and I'm super intrigued. I think it'd be a really cool ride. I just something popped into my feed recently about I-70 and the whole Idaho Springs. I forget what they call the something or other hill. Um, and they're rebuilding it and it'll be done in 3 years
Mm-hmm.
and hopefully ease congestion through there and up I-70 and um, Summit County is just a metropolis.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's beautiful. I know it's up in the mountains. We go there every year to ski. Um, but A, we have really enjoyed making Colorado Springs our base camp and then exploring from there because we lived in Boulder for a summer. I spent a winter in Winter Park. We vacationed in Summit County. And like, those are all very busy areas.
Mm-hmm.
And from the springs, like, there's just some beautiful, quiet places. And this is just south of the springs. And to get a different taste of Colorado, where you're going through a town of 108 with a post office and a Dollar General, and that's it. And Eric's backyard, where you can camp for the night. Um, that's a very different Colorado experience than I-70 or taking the ski train to Winter Park. Remote, quiet, high desert, breathtaking views, um, 90% gravel, 400-mile route. Just sounds awesome. And doesn't sound overwhelming. It doesn't sound like you've got to get your passport and have like everything for 3 weeks through Kyrgyzstan on the Silk Road mountain race. You could, I mean, if somebody wants to hammer this thing out in 4 days, you probably could. They'd be a long 4 days, but, um, or you could take a week and do it, or take 10 days and do it, and it's 37 miles a day. I think that sounds awesome. And I hope your route gains traction and becomes a thing, and people put it on their little to-do list.
Yeah, I've always been partial to short routes. The the longest hike I've done is 1,200 miles, but my average long distance
That's
hike
not
is
very
probably
short.
around 300.
That's still
I
not very
like
short.
those. Yeah,
That's
uh,
300
I
mile
I
hike is not short.
yeah, I said yeah. Maybe I shouldn't say only in front of
Three
300.
3 mile hike is a short hike.
Yeah, yeah. The relatively speaking, yeah, 300 miles is kind of my sweet spot. And personally, I don't want to do another 2,800 mile ride. I've done a couple around 3,000 miles. It just kind of seems excessive at this point. But that is the cool thing about this is it's open to the public. You don't really have to acclimate, and you could bang it out in probably 6 or 7 days if you wanted to. So I think that's going to be a big plus for people, or, just 2 long weekends. You could do half in 3 days and then the other half in the other 3 days. And it's also not grueling. I mean, you can get these routes that have just an obscene amount of climbing, but here we have 400 miles with only 15,000 vertical feet. So you take a week, it's only 2,000 a day. And if you have all day, it might sound like a lot, but if you have all day to climb 2,000 vertical feet, it's really not that hard. It's one of the most enjoyable trips I've done. I'm prone to design these sufferfests where, like, I don't know if I'll finish on time, and did I bring enough gear? Am I going to run out of food? But this was actually a legit vacation, which I'm usually have a strong aversion to.
Well, I think it sounds awesome, and I'm glad you put it together. And having experienced different parts of Colorado ourselves, I would be super excited to find some time and do at least part of it. I think part of what you've done is create a route, and even if you picked out a slice of it, go down and do 50 miles in a day, and go have dinner at the Dollar General store in Murphy. Where do you live? Moffett?
Moffett.
Moffett, Colorado, at the Moffett
Yeah.
General Store. It'd be a fun day. Drive back through Canyon City and look at the rocks you bounced over, and
Yep.
make it part. You don't have to do the whole thing, but you've given us a place to go and a route to follow. And as your PDF notebook guidebook becomes available, you will, like, hey, there's water here, and you can stop and pee here, and you can park here, and your car will be safe here for a couple of days or whatever. But I think that's awesome, and good for you for kind of creating that and crafting it and putting it together. So thank you.
Oh, the pleasure was all mine.
Where does somebody find information on this, as well as all of your hiking books and history books for the Adirondacks? This podcast is heard around the United States, in fact, around the world. And there's a little heat map on where I host this, middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Somebody was listening, literally in the middle of it. There's no island, there's nothing, but so somebody in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean will be listening to this. But where do they find information?
Well, I have a website. It's easy to remember. It's just my name. So erikschlimmer.com. It's Erik with a K, erikschlimmer.com. I've got all my magazine articles I've ever written there. You can read them for free. You can buy the books. And then I have a challenge. I believe it's the challenge page, where it's routes that I put together and how you can learn more about them. And the San Luis Grand Orbiter has its own little home there. When I get this GPX file and data book available, they'll be available there as well.
Awesome. And I would assume somebody can connect with you there if they want to camp in your backyard when you get that all set up.
Yes, they can.
Perfect. I love it. Well, welcome back to Pinning a Number On. I'm glad you picked your bike back up, and I'm glad it helped you through the past year, and sounds like you've had a great year. So I'm happy for you.
Thank you. That means a lot to me. Again, the easiest thing to do is nothing. And I was doing nothing for a while, really wasn't working, took some action. And here we are a year later. It was great to catch up, and I really appreciate your support. Thanks a lot.
Keep moving forward.
Thanks for tuning in today, and I hope you enjoyed catching up with Erik. I'm hopefully doing more with him as I
explore and share the trails in Colorado and even New Mexico, as he's living down near the border. I'd love it if you continue to keep up with Bike Talk with Dave and tune into my new YouTube channel, Pedaling Dirt. And as spring rolls slowly into summer, I hope you enjoy your riding, and remember that nothing compares to the simple pleasure of riding a bicycle.